Hey there, my name is Soundrak and welcome to my Getting Started guide for Sworn, in which I'll cover all the basic concepts you need to know to hit the ground running in this delightful action roguelike. Before I go any further though, I need to note that this video is sponsored by the publisher of the game, Team 17, so a big special thanks to them for this opportunity. Also, Sworn currently has a free demo available on Steam for the Steam Next Fest through June 17th, 2024. So definitely use my link below to try it out if the demo is still active. Sworn is an action roguelike that can be enjoyed solo or cooperatively online with up to 4 players, in which you'll explore and reclaim a fallen Camelot from the reign of a corrupted King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. In it, you play as one of 4 characters, each of whom has 4 different weapon options and 4 different spells to create your basic loadout. From there, you'll customize your build even further with weapon upgrades, meta progression with Merlin's constellations, and in each run within the game, you'll utilize various combinations of over 200 unique blessings from 8 different Fae Lords. And just right now, I gotta say, the developer Windwalk Games has absolutely nailed the combat in this game. It's fast-paced, responsive, and just downright a blast to play. When you first start the game though, you'll only have access to 2 characters, the quick and agile Vigilante and the heavy-hitting Rook, and they're going to be pretty weak until you start getting some upgrades. And that's the first important topic that I want to explain, how to approach early game upgrades to maximize your ability to progress through the game. There are 4 different meta upgrade materials that you'll gather in your runs and then spend in your base to make yourself stronger. They are the following: Grail Water, which is used to unlock small nodes on Merlin's constellations, Fairy Embers, used to unlock the small nodes on your weapons, Emeralds, which are used to unlock large nodes on both constellations and weapons, and Crystal Shards, which are used to unlock new constellations, characters, and their respective weapons and spells. Of these upgrades, you'll be rewarded 10 each of Grail Water, Fairy Embers, and Crystal Shards respectively when completing levels that show these materials on the door before entering a room, or 20 each of these materials if the level is guarded by an elite enemy, which is indicated by the skull icon on the door. Rooms with elite enemies are a bit more challenging, but I've generally found that the added rewards are well worth it. You'll also periodically find statues that will give you a timed challenge to get upgrade materials, coins, or health, where the faster you defeat the enemies that spawn, the more you'll get, so keep your eye out for these statues as they can only be activated after the level has been cleared. As for emeralds, they are primarily obtained by defeating bosses, both the mini-bosses that appear halfway through each biome and the end bosses of each biome. Emeralds and the other upgrade materials also sometimes show up at merchants, and once you've unlocked the right nodes on the treasure constellation, you can get additional materials from random pots and from defeating enemies. Because you're going to be needing tons of these materials to get things going, there really isn't any particular hierarchy in which to choose. I do, however, have some very strong recommendations on where to spend your materials when you're first getting started as follows. For your first constellation upgrades, I highly recommend that you unlock the War constellation as soon as possible and spend your Grail Water and first 2 emeralds getting the 2 large nodes of this constellation, as they will give you additional dashes and or additional mana points, and the increased movement speed is also pretty nice. I generally prefer running with 1 extra dash and 1 extra mana point, but I could see situations where you might want 3 dashes or 2 extra mana points depending on your loadout. Now, an important note about the large upgrade nodes on both the constellations and the weapons. Once unlocked, you can freely flip these nodes to their alternative options whenever you want. Also, in the current demo build of the game, you can fully refund both constellations and weapon upgrades at any time. This is particularly nice on the weapons because once you've got enough Fairy Embers and Emeralds to fully upgrade a weapon, when you want to try out a different weapon, you can just refund the fully unlocked weapon and then reinvest those materials into the new one. Going back to Merlin's perks, after you've gotten the large nodes of the War constellation, I would go around the left side of the Life constellation until you're able to start reliably defeating at least the first mini-boss. And at that point, I would recommend unlocking the Treasure constellation and then get the Knight's Horde nodes that reward additional Grail Water when defeating a boss. You'll be able to unlock everything else in the game long before you finished unlocking the constellation nodes, so the faster you start getting extra Grail Water, the better. From there, I would recommend finishing the outer edges of the life constellation, and if you're playing a lot of online co-op, it might be a good idea to get nodes that decrease the cost of reviving allies if your friends keep dying a lot, or maybe get the bounce back life nodes if you're the one who keeps getting killed. If you find that you enjoy spending gold at the shops, then next you might want to branch out into the wealth constellation. And finally, the last and most expensive constellation you'll want to unlock is the devotion one. This one is saved for last because it is really expensive, both the constellation and its nodes, and although getting more higher rarity blessings is nice, they generally aren't as impactful on your runs or overall progression as the other constellations I've already mentioned. In terms of where to spend your crystal shards on characters, all of the characters are good, but have distinct play styles, the relative value of which will vary based on personal preference and, to a lesser extent, whether you're playing solo or in co-op. And it's honestly hard to describe the characters in general terms, as they each play quite differently depending on which weapon and spell combo you use when you start a run, and even more so what upgrades you pick up during a run. That said, here are my top picks for each character based on what I most enjoyed using. On the Vigilante, I am a big fan of the Chakram, as they've got good damage application up close and at medium range, and either the Blade Rush or the Shadow Strike spell pairs very well with them. For the Rook, I like the hand cannon the most of his arsenal, and the Sky Drop spell pairs with it very nicely. In co-op, the Commander's Shield is also a great option to boost the damage of the rest of your team. By contrast, on the Spectre, I really like the Armillary Sphere, the Scythe, and the Claws quite a lot, but didn't really care for the Arcane Blade very much. For his spells, I also like all of them except the Dragon Dive, which I find a lot harder to use effectively. And last but certainly not least, for the Monk, I really like the Magic Staff, though the Tome and the Chimes are also pretty good, and either the Black Hole or the Arcane Shield are my go-to spells, with the Arcane Shield being very nice for co-op play. If you're just starting out in Sworn, I would just pick one of the options I mentioned based on how fun you think it looks, but honestly, you'll be able to unlock all the characters and their weapons and spells pretty fast, so feel free to experiment. And once you've gotten enough Fairy Embers to fully upgrade one weapon, you can freely refund those points to reinvest in another, so by all means try out all sorts of different combinations. And you never know, a particular loadout might really surprise you, especially if you get good upgrades during your run. And speaking of your runs, it's now time to tackle how to prioritize room rewards and pick Fae blessings to really pump out the damage so you can defeat your foes. In terms of room rewards, there are a couple of general rules that you'll want to follow. First and foremost, whenever you see a sword in the stone, you take the sword in the stone. These weapon upgrades provide huge benefits for pretty much any loadout, and I have a really hard time thinking of any situations where you would want to take any other option. Beyond that, there are a few obvious choices, like not taking a market if you don't have at least a couple hundred gold to be able to buy as many good goodies as might be on sale, and to generally favor rooms guarded by elite enemies over regular rooms, as the extra rewards are almost always worth the added challenge. I mentioned earlier that upgrade materials from these challenge rooms are doubled, but you also get 2 levels from blessing upgrades, and higher chances of higher tier blessings from blessing rewards. So yeah, definitely worth it. But beyond always taking a sword in the stone, you really have to choose based on what you need more of for either your current run or to purchase upgrades back at your base. It's hard to go wrong with more Fae blessings over other options though, as there are lots of nice perks you can get from the Fae Lords even after you've fleshed out your main attacks pretty well. Given a choice between an upgrade or gold, I'll generally take the gold, as you can usually buy an upgrade later at the market and it's nice to have the options that gold gives. Now before we wrap things up, I want to talk about the Fae Lords and how to use their blessings for maximum effect. Sworn has 8 different Fae Lords, each of which has a unique mix of special effects that their blessings can give you. Now I haven't played enough of the game yet to see every possible option, but I do have a good grasp of how each of them works. Every Fae Lord has a blessing for each of your main abilities, so light attack, heavy attack, spell, and dash, and 4 of them, namely Beira, Cliona, Mab, and Titania, can also grant a companion, which is basically a minion pet that deals damage. All of the blessings that relate to your main attacks will increase the attack's damage, and will generally give a status effect specific to that respective Fae Lord. From there, each of the Fae Lords has additional standard blessings that further play off their respective themes or grant additional bonuses, and depending on the mix of lords from whom you've received blessings, you might also be offered duo blessings that play off of 2 different Fae Lords' effects at the same time. Each Fae Lord also has a round table bonus that I think you can only get in co-op, but so far I've only seen one of them and don't know exactly how they work. So with that basic overview of how the blessing system works, here's a quick summary of each Fae Lord, what types of benefits they can bestow, and when to prioritize favoring each specific lord based on your loadout. Starting with Babbed the Dark Omen, her light, heavy, and spell blessings add the backstab characteristic to these attacks, granting additional damage whenever you hit an enemy from behind, while the dash leaves a shade behind that will attack the nearest enemy and can later be upgraded to shoot projectiles. These blessings tend to work best for highly mobile characters that can easily get into the correct position for maximum damage, and tend to work well with the Vigilante using Sword or Chakram or the Spectre using Scythe or Claws. Ranged attackers generally have a harder time pulling off backstabs though, and even if an AoE explosion hits behind a target, if it was fired from in front of the target, it still won't backstab. Babbed's standard blessings further amplify the quick and agile playstyle that works well with backstab by increasing movement speed, granting evasion from attacks, and even making you invisible when you defeat an enemy. So if you like the gameplay of your typical rogue in your roguelike game, Babbed is an excellent choice. Moving on to Beira, the Frozen Witch, her attack blessings increase attack damage and add the chill effect, slowing enemy movement and attack speed. Her standard blessings increase the effect of your chill by allowing it to freeze enemies, deal damage over time, or explode in an AoE Frost Nova. Her companion, the Arctic Hare, will also shoot Frost Novas at enemies, and the dash will leave Frost Novas behind you. Beira also has a couple of standard blessings that relate to mana and spells, which can grant an additional mana charge, increase mana recovery, restore mana when hitting enemies with light and heavy attacks, or just straight up boosting your spell damage. So whether you are focusing on chill and related effects or boosting your character's spell power, Beira is a pretty good choice for just about any character loadout, and it's pretty satisfying when you're able to freeze enemies regularly. Cliona, the Mother of Banshees, is a Fae Lord that initially I wasn't very excited about, but recently have developed a newfound respect for. Her ability blessings increase the damage of your attacks and allow them to inflict the weak debuff on enemies, which reduces enemy damage. I didn't like this initially because in games like this it is always better to not get hit than to plan on taking less damage when you do get hit. However, once I started getting more and more of her standard blessings, I realized just how powerful Cliona can make you. This is because with the right standard blessings, you'll be able to generate or even start rooms with something called Spirit Charge, which can massively increase your damage output. She also has Banshee companions that can do a lot of damage, and you can even have multiple of them at the same time. So yeah, Cliona can be surprisingly good and should work pretty well with just about any loadout. Next we have Gogmagog, the Last Giant, who is also generally pretty good for any loadout. The status effect he adds to your attacks is Stagger, which as you hit enemies will fill up a yellow bar below their health, and when it gets full, they will be stunned for a couple of seconds. The filling of the bar seems to be damage related, so the effect works equally well with fast lighter hits as it does with slower big hits. His standard blessings can further enhance your stuns and damage output against stunned enemies, but he can also give you damage shields as well as increase your loot rewards of upgrade materials. So yeah, pretty nice. Lugh, the Hand of Fate, is themed around critical hits and gold related effects. The ability blessings at base level give a 15% chance to deal double damage, and it is oh so satisfying when you land a big crit on a group of enemies. His standard blessings can increase the amount of gold you get in a variety of ways, or can cost you 20 gold when you get hit to get a 50% damage shield, or even increase your global damage for every 50 gold you have. Also a good Fae Lord for just about any build loadout. Mab, the Queen of Spiders, is a poison themed Fae Lord, but because the effect uses stacks of venom that are applied with each hit, she tends to work best with fast attacks or attacks that hit enemies multiple times, and not so well with slower attacks and playstyles. Her companion is the Broodmother that will also attack enemies to inflict venom, and for her standard blessings, if you're inflicting lots of venom, you will get a chance to spawn spiderlings that will also attack enemies, and will boost the effects of your venom in other ways. Mab also has a couple of nice health related standard blessings, including one that increases your maximum health with each enemy defeated, one that causes you to heal several health at the end of each room, and one that globally boosts the effectiveness of all healing sources. So again, the venom stuff is generally better with faster or multi-hit attacks, but if you have your ability slots already full, she can give you some nice health related boosts as well. Next we have Oberon, King of the Fae, and like Mab, he generally tends to work best with fast attackers or attacks that hit multiple times. His attacks and spell blessings give you 1 stack of Fury per hit, up to a max of 10 stacks, with each stack improving the damage of Fury enhanced attacks. The downside is that these stacks wear off pretty fast, so you've got to be attacking constantly to maintain them. If you can maintain your Fury stacks though, the damage increase is pretty impressive, and can get even better with his standard blessings that will give additional perks when you're at max Fury stacks, such as Chain Lightning that will bounce between enemies, or put you in a flow state that will boost all your damage for a short duration. If you aren't a fast attacker though, his dash ability can be really nice, especially when it gets upgraded by standard abilities, as it will cause your dash to spawn whirlwinds that will damage enemies on contact. If upgraded, you'll get more whirlwinds that can shoot Chain Lightning and even track onto enemies. And last but certainly not least, we have the fire-themed Titania, Queen of the Fae. In contrast to her husband, Titania works great for slower attacks that don't get spammed, because every 8 seconds they'll have the ignite effect that will significantly increase their damage. Her dash and some of her standard blessings can also cause you or enemies to get the immolate effect, which will cause nearby enemies to take damage over time. She also has a couple of different imp companions that provide different effects. And that's all you need to know to hit the ground running in Sworn. I've personally had a lot of fun playing the demo both solo and with friends, and I'm really looking forward to the game's full release. If you haven't already done so, be sure to wishlist the game on Steam, and if it's still during the Steam Next Fest, be sure to use my link to try out the demo. Be sure to check the pinned comment down below if anything in this video becomes obsolete or if I make a new version when the release comes out. But other than that, thanks for watching, have some fun storming the castle, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!